Well, hello and welcome back. Today we are talking about the crash. Not the movie, but the crash that can happen after you close your cart in your launch. The crash that can take us to our knees and take us into a puddle of feeling defeated and depleted and worn out and burnt out and rather tattoo your eyeballs than want to do it again. Yeah, you know that one? Yeah, me too. Yeah, I know. So if you don't know that one, it's not as bad as I just made it sound, maybe. Depending on how your brain wants to tell you stories about it, depending on any meaning that we've made about it. But yeah, it's a thing that can happen. And it's actually a protective mechanism from the nervous system. We're going to talk about that as well. But we're going to talk about some mistakes that many worn out entrepreneurs make that can get them to that point in the first place, and also give you the flip side of that. So hopefully you can avoid it and never experience it if you haven't yet, or before, I should say. And or make sure that next time your launch is a lot lighter, and so that you can really show up for yourself throughout the course of the launch to manage your energy, regulate your nervous system, and stay in that place of alignment. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Yeah, no big deal. Just a little launch roller coaster. If you've launched before, you probably can relate to that feeling of 1 minute being on top of the world, delivering an amazing live with loads of value and great stories, and you're totally on point, and you're making jokes, and the comments are blowing up, and the engagement is on fire, and or the opposite side of that, when the tech gremlins screw up all the emails and all your links are broken, and you're wondering what you're even doing with your life and if you have what it takes, and maybe you have to go get a job, and I can't do this to myself again, it feels awful, and like all the things that you have to do for the launch makes it feel like if you were to have to assemble the demo model collection at an IKEA store, that would seem like a walk in the park compared to all the things you have to do for the launch. you know, I know I'm being a bit dramatic, but to the point is, sometimes when we go all out in a launch, especially if you are someone like me who has high functioning anxiety or ADD or ADHD, and you have a tendency to go all out on something and really pour yourself into it. And at the same time, have really high standards, set really incredible goals for yourself, but then find yourself getting caught up or tripped up in the spiral or the cycle of overthinking, overdoing, overworking. And the whole time throughout your launch, you're just kind of powering through, right? You're powering through, you're running on caffeine and cortisol and cheese strings. I laugh because I've done it. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about, accompanied by the dialogue of the mind in that beautiful head of yours, the collection of characters that are telling us to do more, to work harder, to get it done now, to make it a little bit more perfect, maybe a little better, like all the things that can be going on inside of our head, right? Which you maybe have learned in other episodes is what I call anxiety overdrive, is when we are running on that push from the nervous system that's like, okay, we got to get it done. Come on, hurry, hurry, hurry. And your brain is in a survival state because you're experiencing stress. So your brain is pushing you to do more and to make it, happen quicker, or has this really high expectation for what you want to have happen. And then if you achieve it, yay, that was great. Okay, what's next? Or if you don't achieve it, oh, here we go. It's like gas on the fire, right? Like that's when that inner critic just turns into the raging jerk and just wants to critique everything that happened, making you feel even more disappointed, more discouraged, more depleted, more defeated, and that crash. Whew, let's just take a breath, because that's a lot, right? And before I totally freak you out and scare you, it's certainly not the end result of many launches. And it's not been the result of, at the end result of all of my launches by no means. And I'm, have had points when reaching my goals, I get to celebrate in elation and I'm happy. I'm maybe a little bit tired, but like, you get to regroup, and then you get to go and serve your community, the new people that just came into your world. And that feels incredible. But If you're like me and you set really high goals, for example, on my first launch, it was Yoga at My Desk, which is my first online program, was $97. And it was my first digital product launch. And I was like, I want to make $10,000. $10,000 on a $97 product. It's doable. That's 100 people though. And you need to have a pretty big audience because conversion rates tend to be anywhere between, 1 and 5%. So that's a launch list. Like the people that sign up for your launch, that's a pretty big launch list. Like that's hundreds of people that would need to have come into the free workshop in order to have 100 people sign up. But I didn't know that. I got big dreams, right? I'm like, I want to sell this, and I want to serve this, and I want to share with so many people because everyone needs to learn how to take yoga breaks at their desk because we all spend so much time sitting down in weak, slouchy posture and, all of that stuff that I have woven now into Mindful Strength Method because it is essential because, your body is your vehicle for accomplishing all of this. But there I am, new to the game, and I set insanely high standards. And I had a few people sign up, but not 100. And that's okay. And that's one of the things that we want to make sure that we are really mindful of is as we go, we want to set goals that really stretch us a little bit, but we also need to be willing to adjust those goals because if you have, say, 100 people sign up total for your workshop, which is amazing, it's not likely you're going to have 100% conversion rate, right? And so when we got to play the game a little bit in that we want to set some goals that stretch us, that really kind of encourage us to show up and go a little further and really go all out in a way that feels aligned for you. But we also want to be willing to pull that back a little bit. And I'm kind of dancing around how I want to say this, not to be realistic in a sense, but like we want to make sure that we're setting goals that don't have unrealistic expectations attached to them. And so that comes with practice, right? And so that's one of the mistakes that many worn out entrepreneurs, including myself, make is to just set a numerical goal and then set it and forget it, and then not really adjust it based on how many people sign up for the value forward, conversion event, if you will, like the challenge, the masterclass, whatever it is, however you're going to do it. We want to make sure that we adjust that back a little bit once we see how many people signed up for that original one. Because if we have really high goals and then we are not coming anywhere close, it gives a lot of fuel for the judge in our head that wants to make everything wrong and find fault in what we did. And so making sure that we set a goal that not only stretches you, but is achievable based on the numbers that you have, because ultimately that comes down to the belief in possibility. Because if your nervous system isn't on board with this being possible, and if you're at all in resistance to that, then you're far more likely to default back to patterns of self-sabotage. And we talked last week episode about the 10 different ways that we self-sabotage, particularly during a launch. And that's based on the mental fitness framework of the different ways that we tend to kind of trip ourselves up or get tripped up. Okay, so we want to set a goal that feels possible to you. And we also want to make sure that when you're setting goals, we want to set energy goals as well. And energy goals in the sense that you are incorporating yourself in them, right? And so that means, how do you want to feel throughout the course of the launch? How do you want to show up to your lives, to content creation, whatever it is, so that you are in alignment with your vision, with the end goal that you have for your business and therefore for the launch in this case? And also, how do you want to feel after the launch? Right? Because of course we want to feel happy. I want to feel satisfied. I want to feel successful. Okay, great. So if you want to feel happy at the end of the launch, we want to make sure that we're feeling happy because of how we showed up for ourselves throughout the launch and not just because we've achieved the goal. Of course, some of that satisfaction and some of that emotion is tied to the goal achievement. But if we still have our self-worth really tangled up in achieving the goals and how hard we work, if we don't get to that point, then it can be kind of fuel for the fire, right? And so it's really important that we think about how we want to feel after so that we can really take steps towards that throughout the launch period, and the way that you are showing up for yourself, the routines and the rituals that you have, making sure that your meaningful morning routine is on point, you have your evening experience, you're taking power pauses, like all of the things along the way, so that you are nurturing and nourishing yourself, so that you're keeping the tank topped up, right? Because over the course of the launch, it can start to feel like the momentum required is a lot, right? Kind of like one of those Tough Mudder races where you got the 50-pound thing strapped to your back and you're leaping over obstacles and you're covered in mud. I've never done one. I've seen them on TV, but on the internet. I don't have a TV. I don't know why I said that. But in order to complete the race, if you will, we want to make sure that you're taken care of throughout, right? Because when we are in this push, 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 go, go, go mode, that can happen in a stressful situation, that can happen if you're, got that inner drive that's almost insatiable at times. And if we are really tied to the outcome of the goal achievement, we want to make sure that we are integrating these energetic pauses along the way so that you are showing up for yourself throughout the launch, so that we don't get to that point of being completely exhausted and depleted. And that's, to take a pause before we go further. And why I'm so passionate about this is because I've been there. I've been on the other side of a launch and had not achieved my goal and had nobody sign up. And I had gone all out and I had put in so much and I had given it my all. And it felt to me, because before I was able to untangle some of my self-worth from, my results and my goals, to me, it felt like a rejection almost, because I had done so much and I was out there putting myself out there. And I just felt like, why did no one want this? I don't understand. It's so good. It's so powerful, and so it just, to me, I felt so defeated, and I was flat out, and I was telling my coach, I just feel like burnt out and I'm bummed out right now and I'm super worn out right now. And I even said, I feel like I have a little bit of launch trauma. And as you may or may not know, one of the definitions of trauma is too much, too fast, too soon. And it was too much. And it was too soon because I hadn't really refined everything and set these goals. Like, they were so big and it was unachievable. And so, yeah, it was just a lot. And, it was kind of one of those things, as I mentioned earlier, I was like, I don't know if I can do this again. It's just too much. And so what I would really love to do and help you to do is prevent that from happening, because that's one of the symptoms, if you will, of anxiety overdrive, of that going all out and then having that flat out crash after. And what happens there is that because we're under a pressured situation, if you will, and hopefully we want to remove some of that pressure, but you're showing up, you're giving it to your business, you're giving time and energy and love and effort, and it can be stressful, right? And so your brain perceives this as a stressful situation, and so it goes into fight or flight. And so the way that we handle stress is we tend to default to those patterns of handling stress that we learned as children, right? And so maybe you learned last week that the techniques of self-sabotage, or just the ways that our personality shows up in these situations, right? Like, do you tend to push yourself to achieve more? Do you tend to procrastinate or perfectionate, or want to control the situation, or worry about all the possible outcomes? So what are the ways that you tend to handle stress? And so what's happening there is, depending on how you're wired, you're either fighting and you're going all out and you're taking lots of action, or you're fleeing from the situation. Maybe that's kind of procrastinating or avoiding or going into a people pleasing situation. And so it's just looking at the ways we tend to handle situations. And so if we have this period of fight or flight where we're going all out, right? Like running the Tough Mudder race, then after we get to the other side of it and we cross the finish line, there's almost this natural balance that happens, because if you've been up here going, and at the end, we almost have this natural shutdown phase. And that's what happens. And it's almost this counterbalance, right? We have this polarity that happens, and your body needing to recover, your energy level needing to recover, can default into that shutdown phase. And so that's where we can feel that freeze. And I know for myself in that moment, I was like, wanted to run and hide from the world. And the thought of doing it again just sounded really hard and difficult and not like something I wanted to do, right? And so that tends to happen if we go all out and we get to that other side of it and we have that crash. We tend to kind of want to run from the world and just hide until we need to do it again. Right? And so sometimes that can be, as I mentioned, in a state of just like, okay, that was great, I got it, I nailed it. Or other times that can be that sort of frustration, disappointment, rumination. So we want to make sure that throughout the course of the launch, in order to continually bring yourself back into the green zone, right? And so from a nervous system perspective, the green zone is when we are regulated, when you're taken care of, when you are doing things to support yourself with your routines and your rituals, expressing the survival stress that's happening in your body, replenishing your energy, moving in a way that feels nourishing to you, so that you are in that place of able to handle the challenges, but not getting to the point when you're like, spinning out in anxiety or stress and getting into the red zone. And red zone is kind of frantic and frazzled and all over the place and scattered, and, kind of walking that thin line between a blowout and a meltdown. And so we want to make sure that we are not skipping self-care. Because if we have a lot to do in the launch, our brain will tell us, oh, got to get to it, so much to do, so little time. And one of the mistakes that's commonly made is skipping self-care in favor of doing the things, or grabbing our phone first thing in the morning and just going right into work mode, right? And this has happened to me. Maybe you can relate. Within 20 minutes of waking up, you're on Instagram, you're DMing people, you're checking the links, how many opt-ins overnight, all of that stuff. And then just getting right into go mode. And before you know it, it's 12 o'clock and all you have in your belly is coffee, right? Or doing a little bit of work and then getting on the mat for yoga, for your workout, and spending 50% or more of that time either on your phone doing actual work, or in your head, like pacing back and forth or thinking about what's ahead. And so it's really important over the course of the launch, to avoid the crash, is to keep topping up the cup, right? And making self-care non-negotiable, because it really is and has such a high ROE, return on energy, because it's your energy that's the driving force of the launch. And it's your energy that, if you're not mindful, can get really depleted and take us into that state of that worn out entrepreneur and get to the other side of the cart close. And if we're totally all out throughout the course of the launch and not taking these intentional power pauses, not doing things, not stepping away, then it can take us to that point of exhaustion and that sort of self-protective shutdown that can happen, right? And so sometimes it can feel like we don't have enough daylight hours. But again, it really is that prioritization of how you feel. Because when you are doing the power pauses, doing the workouts, whatever it is, when you're doing those things, you are not only taking care of you, but ultimately what you're doing is regulating your nervous system. And when you are in that dysregulated stress state, it affects how you speak, it affects your energy, it affects your mood, it affects your ability to attract and hold all of the beautiful things that you want. So it's really important from both a physical perspective, mental, spiritual, emotional, but also from an energetic perspective. Because when you are in a contracted stress state, when you're in the red zone, we are very closed off, and your brain is continually defaulting back to those self-protective mechanisms of self-sabotage that can happen when we're under stress, right? And so we want to make sure that you are taken care of. So that's one of the mistakes that people make, is skipping self-care. And so the flip side of that, to prevent the crash, is making sure it's a non-negotiable. And the last mistake that can happen, we've been speaking to throughout, is when we're under stress, we have a tendency to go back to the self-sabotaging patterns or get hijacked by fear and doubt and limiting beliefs, and our mind runs away with us. And so what's really important is doing the self-care, making sure that you have the goals set for yourself that are really aligned with your heart, that you believe to be possible for you. You've created safety around the goals. And so what that means is that we want to spend some time throughout your day in the vision of them, really anchoring yourself in that belief and that possibility, because what we're doing there is creating safety in the mind, because you're allowing your brain the chance to experience that. You're feeling into that delivery of your invitation. You're creating that inner belief that it's possible and that you have what it takes, and that it's safe for you to achieve your goals. It's safe for you to receive everything that you want. It's safe for it to be fun. It's safe for it to be easy. It's safe for you to be the version of yourself that you see in the vision. And so what we're doing there is we're really anchoring the belief in the possibility of it. Because otherwise, out of protection of you, because you're stretching yourself, you're expanding yourself outside of your zone of familiarity, if your brain perceives this to be threatening, then it will kick the fear response in. And of course, that's important in survival situations that require survival actions. But your brain is wired the same way. It doesn't, say, oh, this is, where we need to run from the tiger situation. Right now, it's perceiving fear, it's perceiving stress, and it responds the same way. And so it's kicking us into cortisol, and it's kicking us into tension and inflammation. And so what's really important is strategizing your alignment of your sales and your self-care strategy, so that throughout the course of the launch, especially on those big days, especially in that weird limbo period when you've opened the cart and you're like, is anyone going to sign up? Or more people are going to sign up? I don't know what's even happening right here. And you're feeling that like kind of delirium. So we want to make sure that in those periods, you are stepping back, you're filling the cup, you're doing the yogas, you're doing the workouts, you're doing whatever, and taking space from it, right? Because if we are in that survival state, we're in the fear response, we're not in the mastermind, we're not in the prefrontal cortex, creative center of the brain, where the ideas come, the ease comes, the flow comes. No, it's just not how we're wired, right? And so if we just are in that stress survival state the whole time, it's no wonder that we get to the other side of it and we're exhausted. It's just, it kind of makes sense, right? If you think about it that way. So how can you stay in aligned energy, and how can you overcome this pattern of overthinking, overdoing, overworking? Well, that's really what the mental fitness framework is all about. Teaching you how to catch yourself in those patterns, so that when you do catch yourself in the overworking, overthinking, self-doubt, negative spirals, that you catch that and you take a power pause and you come back to that center place within yourself. You come back to the wisdom within you. You awaken that sage self. And then you decide, oh, maybe I need a break right now, or maybe I should do this right now. Maybe I need to go outside. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. Because you're doing it from that aligned place. You're doing it from that place of your inner guidance and in alignment with your vision, so that you're not only able to overcome the anxiety, but you're doing something there in the power pause to nourish and regulate your nervous system. So that's really the essence of the mental fitness tool set that I'll be sharing actually a lot more about at Align Your Launch. So that's the free workshop that's coming up on February 22nd. It's happening at 1 p.m. Pacific, and there will be a replay if you're not able to make it live. But mental fitness is the foundation of everything that I do in my own life, but also really specifically in the mindful strength method, which is my combination of mental fitness and yoga and breath work. And so you'll learn all about those different tools, the 3 mental muscles. You'll learn what the mental muscles are. We just talked about them, the ability to catch your self-sabotaging patterns, be able to take command of your mind and awaken your sage. You're going to learn all about that and how to use that in your life in just 15 minutes a day to be able to harness the power of your mind. You'll also learn a tool that visionary CEOs use to strategize and plan their launches, and a way to boost your energy, your productivity, and your focus by upwards of 72% that you can integrate into your life and your day as early as tomorrow morning. Well, after the workshop. So if you would like to learn all of that, and if you would like to figure out how to integrate that into your next launch so that you can avoid the dreaded crash after cart close, then make sure to click the link in the show notes and grab your spot to join us. And if you happen to be listening to this later, then definitely just click the link and jump in, because there will be more incredible things coming soon. So if you happen to miss this and you're listening to this way out in the future, I will be running this workshop again. So just connect with me, and that way you'll be in the flow of great things happening in my email community. But yes, what I wanted to really bring to your attention and share with you is that this is avoidable. It's avoidable, and it's not something that is always part of a launch. And it's something that if we are really strategic and intentional, we can absolutely avoid. And I wanted to share that with you, because a lot of times, when that happens, we get scared that it's going to happen again, right? Especially if it feels like it left a mark, or if it was mildly traumatic for us to do a launch, and and not want to do it again because I don't know if I can put myself through that again. And so what's really important is that we recognize that each time you do this, each time you put yourself out there, there's so much growth that happens. There's so many lessons that you receive. And so really making sure that you are compassionate and loving, which is what we do when we awaken the sage. And we take that perspective of empathy and curiosity and self-support and self-nurturing by way of the tools that we've been sharing here, because you have so much incredible magic inside of you, so many gifts to share. And so really just know that when you have these tools to support yourself at the deepest layer of your nervous system, then you're able to really navigate the roller coaster with more ease, more grace. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. I really hope that this has been insightful and helpful. And I look forward to seeing you at Align Your Launch. And until next time, thank you for taking the time to learn how to think on purpose, using your mind like the powerful tool that it is, moving your body on purpose to keep it strong and healthy and energized, breathing on purpose to stay open and expanded and connected, so that you can show up on purpose as the purposeful powerhouse CEO that you truly are. We're going to be diving deep into all of that at Align Your Launch. So hope you can join us, and have a beautiful rest of your day. Take good care. Bye-bye.